Hey everyone, are you remembering that you are loved? Or are you feeling kind of stressed and depressed right now? If you are, a good question to ask yourself is, have I forgiven someone? Forgiveness. What would forgiveness have to do with my anxiety and my depression? Well, I've been doing a lot of research about that, and I'll share you my story that kicked off this whole thought process pretty soon. But in my research with the Mayo Clinic, I discovered that the lack of forgiveness causes us more harm than it does good. And they define forgiveness as the letting go of the need for revenge and anger. And forgiveness is a choice. Now, John Hopkins goes on to actually say that forgiveness can lower the risk of a heart attack, can lower your cholesterol levels, can reduce pain and blood pressure, and reduce anxiety, depression, and stress, and give you better sleep as well. I'm just going to go ahead and read this because this will be much better read than me trying to say it. Chronic anger puts you into fight or flight mode, which results in numerous changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and immune response. Those changes then increase the risk of depression, heart disease, and diabetes. Forgiveness, however, calms stress levels and leading to improved health. I thought that was pretty interesting. So here's my story. What kicked it off was one day I was having an issue with my computer, and that's a very normal thing. Oftentimes, if you walk into the coffee shop and if I'm out in public there, sitting there with my computer, you can see me getting really frustrated with it. It's become a joke of the coffee house, and we call it Kristen's curse. But I've had this curse for computers for a very long time. I mean, people have told me that maybe I have a strong magnetic field and that's what messes the computers up. I have no idea. But people have gone so far as to ask me to step out of a room just so that way their computer can start working again. That makes me feel really great. So, of course, over time, with all the jokes and just feeling very incapable because I couldn't do a project well enough, I began to develop a lot of high anxiety over computers because it seemed like my value and people were placing my value onto whether the computer worked or not. So if the computer was working and I got along with it that day, then my value was high. If it was not working and we were fighting with it, then my value was low. So that kind of got stuck into my psyche there. And whenever I would sit down and the computer would start working and not working properly, I would get very angry, very upset immediately. And so a few weeks ago that happened, and I received a phone call from a friend, and she was asking me, well, what's wrong? And I explained to her, the whole computer issue, and I only have a few minutes, and it won't do this simple thing for me. And she said, well, why do you get so agitated with it? And I'm just like, well, it seems to me because my value is tied up in it. And she said, why? Why would your value be tied up in that? And I explained to her, well, it was been the brunt of jokes and, put downs and people's frustrations and everything. And she asked me a very simple question. She said, well, Kristen, have you ever thought about forgiving those people? Well, I was blown away and I was like, well, no. I mean, I never really saw anything to forgive because I didn't know that those things were actually affecting me, not until now when I'm actually, putting the dots together and seeing how my value was being tied up into a computer. And so that really caused me to think a lot about it and what forgiveness was. What were the health benefits of forgiveness? I mean, is forgiveness tied up into my anxiety over it? And sure enough, it was. And so I had to really think about the forgiveness aspect. So how do we go about forgiving people, especially those chronic people in our lives that are constantly bothering us? One is to empathize with them. Try to find out their life story and see maybe why they're so cranky, why they're just bothering you. try to empathize. Two is remember that no one is perfect. You're not perfect, they're not perfect. And if you can realize that, then you can lower your expectation for them and their behavior. And then fourthly, forgive yourself. Maybe there's something that you need to forgive yourself over, and because you can't forgive yourself, you can't forgive others either. So this is the month. This is February, the month of love, and this is just a relationship tip here. So if you are experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression in your life and you're kind of wondering where's this coming from, why don't you just stop and take a look for a moment and look at your relationships and see where you're at? Because who knows? Maybe this is the answer to it. It's worth considering and worth researching. So I just want you to remember that you are loved, and go ahead and pass that on to someone else. Have a great day.